Welcome to the Matt Bernier Show.
What's going on? The Matt Bernier Show, DRF Live. If you're watching on live.drf.com on Friday, September the 23rd, thank you for doing so. If you listen podcast version, YouTube, SoundCloud, drf.com, iTunes, all sorts of different ways for you to find the show. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me at Bernier_Matt right there on Twitter. We've got all sorts of good things going up. Big weekend ahead of us. Obviously tomorrow, Pennsylvania Derby Day. The 3-year-olds are going to take center stage there. You've got the Grade 1 Cotillion on the undercard. I don't even want to call it the undercard, kind of the co-featured event on that Parks card. You've also got a day down at Laurel Park. We'll go over 2 races, one from Parks, one from Laurel, the Pennsylvania Derby as well as the Turf Cup. A couple of really fun races going on. For the time being anyway, going forward, next week I don't know what the schedule is going to be for those of you that are new to the show or you listen every Friday or podcast, however it is. I don't know how I'm going to do it because I'm going to be traveling out to Santa Anita for Awesome again and all their sort of big prep races, so we'll figure out what the schedule is. I'm going to be flying on Thursday. I don't know how we'll do it, but normally every Friday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, if you want to check this thing out. But as we're getting closer to the Breeders' Cup, and that's why I'm going out there to Santa Anita next week, we're going to see some preps for the Breeders' Cup, whether it's the Classic, whether it's the Turf, whether it's you name it. There's going to be prep races going on really across the country as well. Belmont Park's going to have some stuff, but we're ramping up. It's all Breeders' Cup talk. We got about, what, 5 weeks, I think, total until the Breeders' Cup World Championships. And last week we talked about the Breeders' Cup Classic and the Breeders' Cup Distaff divisions. Let's talk about the 2 mile divisions, one on the turf, one on the dirt. Let's start off with the mile. I feel like the mile is one of the more prestigious events that the Breeders' Cup has. No disrespect to the dirt mile. It's taken a little while to catch on, and I think unfortunately a lot of people view it as sort of the also-ran or the also-eligibles that aren't quite good enough for the Classic but aren't good enough to sprint at 6 furlongs, which is unfair, but we'll get to the dirt mile in a little bit. The mile itself on turf, I think, is a fantastic race, always has been, always will be. The thing that I'm most fascinated with about the Breeders' Cup mile as a whole is the idea that fillies seem to do just as well, if not better, than a lot of the males. And you can't say that about many of the other divisions. You've occasionally seen some girls step up and do some good things in some of the other divisions, and obviously Zenyatta is one of them, but it seems like the mile, the girls that come over or here domestically, they're just as good, if not better, than the boys. In my top 5, and we're going to do this again, every sort of division that we can go through, it's headed by the Queen. Tepin, there's really not much else to say other than she's fantastic. She's won in, what, 3 different countries, a couple of different continents. She's just a fantastic filly, and most recently we saw her a few weeks ago. This is her down the lane, the Woodbine Mile. Robert Geller with the call.
And the trailer for action. They turn in the Rico Woodbine Mile. Tepin comes up leisurely. Julien Leparoux looks around, joins full mast. Down the outside, Mudakayev, the real running begins. Trying to get a run as a rod. Tepin trying to get clear here. Fighting down the outside. Mr. Owen is running on. Tepin in front. They have a furlong to run, and she has turned them away. And she is going to make this her own personal playground. Tepin on to win the Rico Woodbine Mile. Tower of Texas second, Mudakayev third.
Nice field that Tepin beat in this spot. Now the concern is, I don't even know if I want to call it a concern. That clearly wasn't her best race, but the fact that she was still able to overcome and win off of a layoff, coming back across the Atlantic Ocean, I thought it was a very good performance. I think she's only going to take a step forward. Sounds like she'll have one more prep down at Keeneland, whether it's against the boys or the girls, TBD, and then she'll go out to Southern California to Santa Anita Park with that new turf course. It's going to be another sort of storyline going forward. I believe opening day at Santa Anita is next Friday, so we'll see how the turf course plays leading up to the Breeders' Cup. Number 2 on the list, if we could take a look at that top 5 again, for me is Ironic. This is a horse I've always been very high on. He's got a world of ability. The biggest concern with Ironicus is his health. He's just always had, whether it sounds like it's feet this time around. Last year, I believe, he had some sort of a fracture that kept him out of competition for quite some time. When he can run, when he's healthy for Shug, he's one of the more talented horses. Before he got hurt, he was going to probably go into the Breeders' Cup Mile as arguably one of the choices, if not the outright favorite. So Ironicus is a supremely talented animal. The question is ultimately health with him. If he's healthy and ready to go, he's got to be considered on the short list of contenders. Number 3 is Monde Elise, and we're going to take a look at his win right now in the Arlington Million. This is a horse that's fascinating. You see him on the outside right now. He's rolling along. It's fascinating to see a horse that just, he's so much better going left-handed. I don't understand why. He's in those purple silks right now, and you see, I hate to say this, is sort of the, we can tell the difference between an American rider and a European rider, and you can tell just by the way that the rider's getting after the horse. This is a very talented animal. And it's a stark contrast in his form between straight and right-handed races as opposed to left-handed races. Someone pointed that out on Twitter, and we said it right before the Arlington Million. I don't know why, but this horse is just much, much better going left-handed. Maybe you want to say it wasn't the strongest Arlington Million field in the world or out of all time. At the end of the day, he still ran a very good race at a distance that's probably a little bit longer than he ideally wants. I think he's going to be much better getting back to the mile. Sounds like he'll prep at Keeneland before going out to Santa Anita. I have Monday at least. Number 3. Number 4 is a Southern California horse, and that's Midnight Storm for Phil D'Amato. This is another one. He's not been the... I'm trying to think of the right way of putting it. He's not been the most consistent horse throughout his career, but when he's right, and this entire campaign, he's been right. He's a brilliant horse. He can really take a field, put them to bed. He's got that big sort of speed early on. He doesn't have to have the lead, kind of like his stablemate, obviously. But he's just a very nice animal. I don't know if I love the idea of training him up to it. Maybe we'll see him in one of these prep races. I'm not entirely sure. You can find all the probables and what their next starts are on DRF.com in the Breeders' Cup section, as well as lists of contenders, Mike Watchmaker and Brad Free. They've got morning line odds out. As far as I'm concerned, Midnight Storm, he still needs to prove to me against the best of the best. I know he beat Tourist, who I have at number 5. Midnight Storm's got to prove to me that he is really sort of the upper echelon or can run with the top 3. And I talked about the 5th horse, Tourist. Never been a big fan, but this is his most recent run up at Saratoga in the 4-star Dave. Look, it's hard for me to knock this. I understand he was sitting just off of a slow pace, but he finally did things the way that you wanted to see him. A little bit late with the lead change, as he kind of always is, but he puts the field away. I thought this was for me, was the best performance Tourist has given probably of his career. And I understand, you look at some of the other horses that that day, they've come back and they've been very, very impressive. You had King Creasa come back. You had Ring Weekend come back at the end of Saratoga. We'll have a couple more runners come. Force the Pass. He'll be in the Commonwealth Turf Cup, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. I just think Tourist, he's a nice horse. I don't think he can run with Tepin. I don't think he can run with Veronicus if he's healthy. And I'm not sure he can run with Monde Eliste. For me, it just seems like those top 3 have sort of separated themselves. And when I say the top 3, really, they may have separated themselves, but I think number 1, and we'll take a look at it one more time, the top 5 for me, as far as the Breeders' Cup Mile is concerned, going into the preps with about 5 weeks to go to the Breeders' Cup. It's Tepin's world. If she runs her race, I just think she's better than everyone else. Veronicus for Shug is a very interesting runner. It'll be interesting to see how he comes back down to Keeneland and with his price before going out to Southern California. Monde Eliste, Midnight Storm, and Tourist round out my top 5 for the Breeders' Cup. Things will change. We've got a lot of long way to go, but at the same time, we're getting close. I say we have a long way to go, but we're close. It's one of those sort of odd periods. We'll see how everyone preps leading up to the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita, first Saturday in November. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll dive into more Breeders' Cup talk. It's the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile here on the Matt Bernier Show. Stay with us.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker, the exotic wagering app.
Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
10 after 12 on the East Coast, 10 after 9 on the West Coast. The Matt Bernier Show here on DRF Live. If you're watching, live.drf.com. Thank you for doing so. If you watch podcasts or listen to it, YouTube, SoundCloud, DRF.com, iTunes, you name it, it's out there. You can find it. Let's move on to the next Breeders' Cup division that we're going to talk about this weekend. It's the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, the other mile, if you will. Again, feel like it gets short shrift and it shouldn't. There's nothing wrong with a dirt mile. I think everyone just loves to bash it and say it's a way of ducking competition. If you don't think you're good enough to run in the Classic, my thought process has always been, if you don't believe that you're giving your horse or the connections the best opportunity to win, why would you run there? I have no problem, as we take a look at my top 5, I have no problem with Frosted running in the dirt mile if they choose to go there. I hate that people just continue to bash it and say, oh, it's the loser's way out, it's the easy way out. That's nonsense, that's crap. He may not be best at 10 furlongs. Why would you run him in a race that may not be his best? Why would you do that? I had no problem with what they did with Liam's Map last year, running in the dirt mile. It's still a Breeders' Cup race. It's still a prestigious race. It may not be the Breeders' Cup Classic, but guess what? There's only one Breeders' Cup Classic. I have no problem if Connections decide that they want to go, and it sounds like they're going to train Frost right up to the Breeders' Cup, and we're going to take a look at his Metropolitan Handicap, his mile earlier in the year. Right there, this is one of the 2 best performances of the year. I would put this right there with Arrowgate's Travers, but I have no problem, and I hate seeing the people that just continue to you're belittling the race, the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Look, whether you love it or you hate it, that's neither here nor there. Look at what this horse is doing at a mile. And this is a little bit of the intriguing thing about this horse, for me anyway. I think the mile is his sweet spot. I think that's what he wants, 8 furlongs. But I have to be honest, I think he wants 1 turn. This year at Santa Anita, the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, 2 turns. I still think he can do it, clearly. We've seen him. He's won at 9 furlongs going 2 turns. He's more than capable. I think his best ultimately, I think he's a 1-turn horse. I've been saying it. You can go back for months now. I think he's a 1-turn horse. That doesn't mean he can't win, and he shouldn't be the favorite if they choose to go in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, which for the last time I'm saying, stop making it sound like it's a downgrade. If they don't think he can win the Classic because of the distance, I don't think it's because of the competition. If they don't think he can get 10 furlongs, what's wrong with that? Run him where the distance that I think is most suitable for him. That would be a mile. Rant over. Let's move on. Number 2 for me anyway, and this is where things get a little bit interesting. My 2nd and 3rd runners for my Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile top 5, they're running tomorrow in the Pennsylvania Derby. We'll talk about the Pennsylvania Derby in a little bit. Gunrunner and Cupid. Let's start with Gunrunner. Gunrunner is a horse. He finally has sort of won me over a little bit. His mat win at Churchill Downs I thought was very, very impressive. I understand he still popped back to his left lead, but he put away a nice little horse, Texas Chrome, who's come back to do some good things. He'll run in the Oklahoma Derby on Sunday, I believe. Probably is a heavy favorite in that spot. I picked him on NBC in the Haskell, and it just didn't work. And I was disappointed with the race. On the far turn, it looked like he was ready to go. It looked like Florent Giroux had plenty of horse, and he just didn't go for one reason or another. And I think it's just because he just doesn't like a wet track. I think we just have to chalk it up and say that. The only 2 times this horse has been off the board in his career, of them on wet tracks, he comes back. I thought he ran tremendous in the Travers. He was never a legitimate threat to win at any point. No one really was. Arrowgate ran a hole in the wind. But I thought he ran very well, and for me, the professionalism is getting there. He changed leads on cue. He didn't pop back like he just always does down the lane. I think Gunrunner is very interesting if they choose to go in the dirt mile instead of a race like the Classic, or if they decide to head elsewhere with him. 3rd for me, Cupid. He's the kind of horse for Bob Baffert. We'll see about tomorrow. Looks like there's a lot of pace signed on in the Pennsylvania Derby. We'll talk about it a little bit. Cupid is the kind of horse to me that could golden sense a field in the dirt mile at Santa Anita, where you just go guns blazing, hammer, drop the hammer and go, and try to run this field off their feet. Throw down 45 for a half. I think he can get it. I think he can stay at a mile. You push him out to 9 and 10 if he's going to go those sort of fractions. Yeah, he's probably going to get a little bit vulnerable. At 8 furlongs, I think if they decide that they just want to go, guns blazing, send him right to the front and set ballistic fractions, I think Cupid's the kind of horse that can make him pay. 4 on this list is Braidster. Braidster's a bit of an underrated horse. I think he was exposed for not being necessarily top quality at 9 furlongs and up in the race like the Woodward. His Stephen Foster, I have no complaints, no issue with, but at the same time, it was against a little bit of a weaker field, and the favorite that they FX, he threw a little bit of a fit. Apparently, a bunch of motorcycles drove by, and he lost his cool. And we know FNX can be a bit of a goofball from time to time. So, Braidster, I don't want to make it sound like I'm belittling him. I think he's a very talented horse. And I think in the dirt mile, I think he'd have a legitimate chance. I just don't know that he's quite as good as some of the top runners in this division or in a division like the Breeders' Cup Classic. And number 5, if we take a look again, number 5 is the X factor in this entire thing, and arguably in the entire Breeders' Cup. That's Run Happy. Run Happy's back on the workout tab. Sounds like next weekend he's going to make his first start since the Breeders' Cup. Or I'm sorry, since the, that would be the Malibu at Santa Anita in almost 10 months. His first start in the ACAC at Churchill Downs. Look, I don't know what we're going to get out of this horse. There have been all sorts of other stories, you know. We're not going to get into that. But if he comes back as good as we last saw him, sure, he belongs in this conversation. But I don't know what we're going to get out of him. When we most recently saw him, he was fantastic. That was the day after Christmas. I mean, think about that. It's been that long since we've seen Run Happy. There's no arguing the talent. The talent is there. I just don't know what we're going to get. This would be his second start off the layoff against a horse like Frosted or possibly Gunrunner or Cupid or any of these other big names that could go, Texas Chrome. You're asking a lot. You're asking a lot. I know he's very, very talented, but boy, he would have to be an absolute monster if he were going to come off of just one prep and then go out to 2 turns for only the second time in his career. Run Happy. He's the X factor of this division. But I don't think there's any denying. Frosted, should he go in the dirt mile, deserves to be the favorite. I'd probably be licking my chops to try to bet against. But at the same time, he deserves to be the favorite off of the Met Mile, the Whitney. That right there, that's a double that's good enough to win Horse of the Year most years. This year, though, he just happens to run into a year where we've got a lot of interesting things going on. And look, maybe you add a Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile to that resume. Maybe California Chrome stubs his toe. Maybe Arrogate doesn't win. All of a sudden, Frosted comes into play. Then you got to deal with the fillies. You got Songbird. You got Beholder. So many different things could go on. I think it's a fascinating time of year, and it's kind of like I butchered at the beginning of the first segment, wrapping it up. There's a long way to go, but there's only 5 weeks. It's a short period of time. When I say there's a long way to go, a lot of things can happen, but we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, going toward the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to review last weekend's races. I'd hoped we would have a couple of decent ones. We did. We got the 2 two-year-old races, just locks and barrels. And then we'll take a look at a few races coming up this weekend before we dive into NFL Week 3 trifecta later on the Matt Bernier Show. Stay with us.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticketmaker helps you build profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticketmaker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticketmaker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticketmaker, the exotic wagering app.
Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Orgo.
Does your online wagering platform want you to win? If they did, wouldn't they help you win? At DRF Bets, we're all about raising your game. That's why we give our players the data, tools, and know-how that no other service can. DRF Bets is more than a place to wager. It's a platform to help play better and win more. Brought to you by the folks who love racing as much as you do.
12:19 on the East, 9:19 on the West. The Matt Bernier Show here on DRF Live. We'll try to stay well versed as far as sports are concerned. Chris Bosh feeling physical. He's always had some problems with blood clots over the past few years. It's terrible. So I don't even know. Maybe this could be the end of Chris Bosh as far as his career is concerned. That'd be terrible if it was. But a guy that got overlooked in that whole thing with Wade and LeBron down there. Anyway, I digress. Let's move into the recap. We went over 3 races last weekend, 2 of them Churchill Downs, 1 from Woodbine. Let's start with the Iroquois. Going into the Iroquois, I was quite high on a horse called Not This Time. And it just looked like he could be the kind of horse, and I said last week, and go back and watch it again, that maybe he could be one. He was the first one I'd gotten kind of excited about. And maybe he could be a Derby horse. And at the very least, a Breeders' Cup Juvenile horse. Well, guess what? He went out there, and I was at a wedding last Saturday, so I didn't get to be in here on DRF Live and talk about it with Dan Illman and Mike Beer, but I did get to sneak away from the reception momentarily to watch, and I was blown away. I think he is, for me, I understand Klimt. I love Klimt. Don't think he's done anything wrong on the West Coast. There's one horse to beat in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and I like what Dale Roman's going to do, train him right up to it. I think Not This Time. Winning for fun after blowing the start over a sloppy track. There were so many things about the race that I loved. Ran into a slow pace. I think Not This Time is the goods. Jonathan Kinchin apparently got down on him after his maiden score down in Ellis Park. Good for Jonathan. I believe he talked about it on the DRF Players podcast. I sent him a text, and he got a fair number on that horse. So I like where he's sitting. I think Not This Time. I think he's the goods. I think he should be considered the favorite for the Cup Juvenile. The other 2-year-old race down at Churchill last week was the Pocahontas. And I gave you 3 different ones. Most likely winner, vulnerable favorite, live long shot. But the most likely winner was Daddy's Little Darling. And in fact, she went out there and won, luckily enough. She went off paid 7-2. By the way, going back to the other race, Not This Time, not a brilliant sort of decision for me as far as the odds are concerned, 9-5. Vulnerable favorite, Bling on the Music. She was a fantastically brilliant and fast 2-year-old that was running in these races in Texas, at Arapahoe, at Lone Star, just destroying Texas breds. Just burying them. But she was going 5, 6, 4.5 furlongs. Now she's going to try and go 2 turns. I just didn't love the way that was going to set up. In many ways, she ran very well. She finished 3rd that day, and she didn't actually go off as the favorite. She was one of the co-choices at 5-2. So I guess a vulnerable favorite. She ran 3rd. I'm going to say that was a win for us. Total miss was live long shot. Jetaway Sioux. I thought this was a horse that you could just throw in, spike things up at a giant price. Finished last at 17-1. Didn't get all 3 of them. Sorry. So those 2, the Churchill races, we did very well on. The Canadian, not so much. The one thing I'll say about the Canadian, I thought the live long shot was Midnight Miley, and I thought the vulnerable favorite in the race was Decida. I didn't think Decida would go off at money. I preferred Reina de Bateria over Decida of the 2 Chad Brown entries. I thought Midnight Miley would just go out there and wing it on the front end, and she was just in good form. Sure, the questions about the distance, the surface, the rider change to Flavian Pratt, all of it ended up boring out. There was nothing that Flavian did wrong, and I don't really think it had anything to do with the turf or the distance. I just don't think she's quite as good as the big girls. Decida, she ran a race. She was a little bit wonky, lead changes as she always is. I think that was a combination of the wet turf, which she doesn't like, and that long stretch at Woodbine. There's a part of me that doesn't want to completely rule her out come Breeders' Cup time. Interesting to see what Chad Brown decides to do with her. Reina de Bateria, I thought she ran very well. Didn't like that she was kind of trying to get out, turning for home, but she dug in gamely. I thought it was a very good effort. I'm happy for Reina. She's been a tough luck loser for quite some time, and Chad is just the miracle worker. Put the blinkers on her, and she's been a different animal. So live long shot, Midnight Miley, not good. Vulnerable favorite, I guess because she lost at even money. Decida, she ran 2nd by a head. I'm going to give a little bit of credit to myself. And I liked Reina a little bit, but my pick in the race was Midnight Miley, and she ran up the track. It is what it is. 2-3 last weekend. I can't complain about that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, oh, no, we're not. Are we going to just go roll through this thing? We're going to roll right through. We're going to roll right through. Timing is going to get a little bit jacked up here. Let's dive into the Commonwealth Turf Cup. This is at Laurel Park tomorrow afternoon on DRF Live here, starting at 3 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. Not 4, 3 o'clock Eastern. Let's take a look at the field. If you're new to the show on DRF Live or you're watching on YouTube, the far right column, my odds, not the morning line, not anything else. That's what I think is value on these horses. Very, very interesting race, I think. You can go a number of different ways. I think the most likely winner, Chad Brown, he'll send out March. March is breaking toward the outside. That could be a problem at a mile going into the first turn. You essentially break directly into it at Laurel Park at a mile. I think that's going to be tough. Manny Franco's going to have to work out some sort of a trip from out there, but He just ran so well in that comeback race. I think 9-2 is fair. He's going to be much, much shorter than that. So that's why I'm saying I'm not going to be betting him. I'm going to be betting the horse that I think is a live long shot. My pick. You can watch the whole nuts and bolts stakes preview that Dan Illman and I did, video.drf.com. I think Reporting Star has a legitimate chance to win this race. From a speed figure standpoint, it looks like recently he's just way off form. Second start off the bench for Elizabeth Voss is a positive move. He has multiple Beyer speed figures that are fast enough to beat this field. 4 times he's eclipsed a triple-digit Beyer. I think this horse is going to come into it. He's going to be completely overlooked. I made him 9-1. He's 15-1 in the morning line. I think he's probably going to go off around 15. I like Reporting Star in the Commonwealth Turf Cup. I think the most likely winner of the race is March. Let's move on to the big one at Parks for the 3-year-olds, the Pennsylvania Derby. You got a field of 12 in here. Fascinating. Really, really interesting race. You've got the Derby winner. You've got the Preakness winner. You've got a couple other big race winners in here. I think the most likely winner, and we can go through, take your time, no rush, Craig and the boys in the back. I think the most likely winner in this race is Gunrunner. Now, I didn't say that as far as our graphic is concerned, simply because I feel like a dope if I'm giving out a 5-1 shot as the most likely winner when I've got 3 or 4 other ones that are between 6 and 7-1. I think Gunrunner is the most likely winner, but I say that very tentatively. I think a live long shot is Connect. Chad Brown. Who else? I think Connect is a horse that he was just compromised. I believe Saratoga on Travers Day was very difficult on the main track to make up ground. I know we haven't really talked about that much, and I don't know if the boys have as far as any of their previews when they did this race or the Cotillion. I thought the main track at Saratoga on Travers Day was difficult to make up ground. I think Connect was farther back than he wanted to be. I think he can be much closer. His run 2 back in the Curlin with that 101 Beyer, that makes him a major player in here. I think Connect at 12-1, you get Javier. I don't think he goes off at 12. I think he goes off considerably less, but luckily for me, I made him 6-1. I think he's a live long shot, air quotes, but he's my pick in the Pennsylvania Derby. Connect. Vulnerable favorite, and I don't mean this in a negative way. Nyquist, simply because he's been gone for some time. I don't like the 4 consecutive mile drills put into him down at San Luis Rey. I say I don't like that. I understand why they're doing it. He hasn't been out since the Haskell. He needs fitness going a mile and an eighth. The concern ultimately is just this pace scenario. He's coming off of a layoff. He's going to have to deal with some of the gas early on. Sounds like they really, ideally would like to take him a little bit off the pace, 2 or 3 lengths. I think that's fine if they do that. I just don't know. Boy, you're giving up recency to a lot of the main competition. It's going to be fascinating to see Cupid runs. It's going to be fascinating to see how Summer Revolution for Rudy Rodriguez. Smith stretching out for the first time. Awesome Slew, who ran a hole in the wind, and the Smarty Jones, the local prep. Hit it once more, the New York bred that has speed figures fast enough to win. The Pennsylvania Derby is going to be an awesome race tomorrow. I think it's a fantastic betting race, and you're going to want to get down with us here on DRF Live starting 3 o'clock Eastern. Now we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to give you the NFL Week 3 trifecta. We're going back and see how we did last weekend with those 3 races, 3 games that I picked, and we'll give you 3 more this week, and we'll get you DRF Live starting tomorrow, and the Formulator race of the day for Friday from Belmont Park. Big pick 6 carryover at Belmont. Stay with us.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and play them with 1 click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before it happens and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker, the exotic wagering app.
$12.29 on the east, $9.29 on the west. The Matt Bernier Show here on DRF Live. We're going to go a little bit heavy this week, but we're on more often than not every Friday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Again, next week and the next few weeks may be a little bit on the wonky side just because of scheduling and travel and whatnot. But a new thing that we've been doing, because it's NFL season, my New England Patriots last night put a beat down on the Houston Texans with not the backup but the third stringer, Jacoby Brissett. It really is, and I don't want to sound like a complete jerk, but I kind of do. Being born and living in Massachusetts for the first 24 years of my life, just rolling through it. It's good to be a New England sports fan. Anyway, I'm done. I'm done. We'll move on. Last week, 3 games that we threw out there. The first week was a little bit rough, 1-2. Last weekend, luckily we went 2-1. Gave you the Cowboys +2.5 on the road. Also said outright they won outright. Bengals at Steelers -3.5. I thought the Steelers would win by a touchdown. They won by 8. It was a disaster of a game when you just watched the end. The rain was coming down in droves. But the Steelers prevailed. And the Falcons at the Raiders. I thought the Raiders at home -5.5. I thought that was the play. Look, I've been surprised by the Falcons. I don't know what to make of them right now. And that's why I stayed away from the Monday night game. That should be a very fun one to watch, though, finally, because the Monday night games recently have just been dreadful. Really, I say recently, been past 2 years. This Monday night, this should be a good game. The Falcons go into New Orleans down at the Superdome, and I think the Saints are favored by 3, I believe. But a game I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. So let's look at the year-to-date record, 3-3. We're trying to get to 52%. 52% is the goal. You're trying to get to that. The first game of the week, the Redskins at the Giants, the New York Football Giants. Not a huge fan of the Giants. Beat the Patriots a couple times. Some big, highly publicized games. Not the end of the world. Happens. Everyone loses. They're laying 5 at home. This is a scenario where I just think the Giants, talent-wise, are so much better than the Redskins. So much better. And now you're hearing rumblings out of Washington that the locker room, they don't love Kirk Cousins. Well, the Redskins are a disaster from top to bottom. Dan Snyder down. Just the whole thing is a mess. I think the Giants win by a touchdown at least. Maybe I'm being a little bit bold because last week I thought it was going to be a shootout at the Meadowlands, and it ended up being just a, I don't want to call it a dumpster fire, but it was just a hard game to watch. It ended up being 16-13 over the Saints. I'll lay the 5 points at home with the Giants. Game number 2, the LA Rams. Coming with that just scintillating 9-3 victory against the Seattle Seahawks. They're going to Tampa. Tampa just got absolutely whacked last weekend in Arizona. I'm laying the 6. I think the Bucs by a touchdown. That sounds about right. The Rams, I threw out that number. This guy said, I mean, LA Rams football. What else could you ask for? 8 quarters of football, 9 points, and you're 1-1. I mean, that sounds like a winning recipe to me. Jeff Fisher, I don't know how he continues to get jobs. I don't know how he's kept his job. I mean, the guy's a disaster. Has been for quite some time. I mean, you really, the last good team that Jeff Fisher had was what? Steve McNair and Eddie George going back to the Titans? How long ago was that? 2 years ago? I think I was this tall back then. Doesn't matter. Take the Bucs -6. And the last game that we'll talk about, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think they're a legitimate sort of Super Bowl contender. I think there's only 2 teams in the AFC. I think it's the Steelers and the Patriots. No disrespect to anyone else. I think the Jets are a good team. They've played much better than I thought they would. And they've got, look, they're probably going to win 9 games. They'll be a playoff team. Bubble, anyway, borderline. The Steelers, though, I think they're the goods. And everyone is all over the Carson Wentz train. He hasn't faced a real team yet. I mean, he faced the Browns, which I got wrong week 1. It's fine. And then, most recently, last Monday, my friend and I go out Monday nights, watch the game. I think the Bears are just truly bad. Like, just bad top to bottom. Similar to the Redskins. Not very good, but, I mean, the Bears, and I had to tweet afterward because he thought that the Eagles just, not that they didn't have a chance, but a rookie, 2, going on the road, he's going to be exposed. I said, look, the kid's good. I don't think he's a superstar. But you look at all the numbers that people are throwing out there. No interceptions through his first, I don't even know how many attempts, 65 or whatever it is. Good. He's played very well. He faced a real team this week. At home, I don't care. I think the Steelers go in, and I think they absolutely throttle the Philadelphia Eagles. Laid the 3.5 on the road. I'm not that concerned. I think they win by 10. So there are your 3 plays for this week. Again, year-to-date, 3-3. We're trying to get 52%. Got to beat the VIG. The 3 plays for this week. Giants at home, -5. Bucs at home, -6. Steelers on the road, -3.5. DRF Live starts 3 Eastern tomorrow. Let's take a look at the slate and get you up to speed. What's going to come? Myself, Dan Illman, Mike Beer. We'll bring you through a lot of graded stakes action. Big stuff at Laurel all day. Big stuff at Parks. You got a graded stakes race at Belmont Park. You got a graded stakes race at Los Al. We're going to throw a video preview for that tomorrow at some point during the day. We've got pick 4, Laurel, all sorts of good stuff. The Grade 2 Pennsylvania Derby, the Grade 1 Cotillion, though. Those are the 2 big races of the weekend. We'll find out. And I feel bad that I've just kind of glossed over the Cotillion, but at the end of the day, with so many other good races, it's not a huge field in the Cotillion. I'll put it out there. I love Songbird. You know that. Anyone who watched this show from the very beginning, anyone that watches any of our videos, I love Songbird. She is my favorite horse in training. I think she's going to lose tomorrow. I think she's no longer, and I think Catherine Sophia, the way that she prepped in the Princess of Silmar at Park, it wasn't that she buried an overmatched field. It was that she was professional. I think Catherine Sophia upsets Songbird tomorrow at Parks in the Cotillion. But we'll be on and we'll tell you all about it. It's 3 o'clock Eastern, DRF Live tomorrow afternoon, live.drf.com. Thanks for watching if you're on live.drf.com right now. If you listen to the podcast version, still got plenty of time. Got all sorts of different ways for you to find us, drf.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, ESPN, you name it. It's out there. You can find it. Again, next week, bear with me. Don't know how we're going to finagle this thing because I'll be out in Santa Anita, and the following week I'll be at Keeneland. We'll figure some things out the next few weeks, and even right through the Breeders' Cup. Might be a little bit wonky as far as scheduling is concerned, but you'll find some fashion of this show at some point during the week, right up through the Breeders' Cup and right on through the rest of the year. So thank you for giving us a little bit of time on this Friday, September the 23rd. Without further ado, big 2-day 6 carryover at Belmont Park this afternoon. The formulator race of the day is race number 5 at Belmont Park. Mike Beard, Dan Illman, take it away. We'll see you next week.